All right. Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Rush, the morning empowerment call for busy executives, heart-centered leaders causing the change we want to see in the world. Last week on Friday, the community said, can we talk about sales? Can we talk about how we go from hello to yes, hi, how are you, to yes, I'd like to do something with you. I'd like to move forward in some capacity. Some might call that sales. Some say we're always selling something. We might be selling our attitude. Do we have a good attitude or a bad attitude? And what do we want other people to walk away with when they walk away from us? Can we lift them higher, or are we bringing them down? And if there were a pathway or a way that had us go from hello to more yeses, would it be worth thinking about studying, learning, practicing? Because at the end of more yeses is more things that we're looking for, more things that others are looking for, and we reduce some of the friction that may be in our lives if we're doing it maybe the wrong way. We're not often taught as kids the optimal ways to communicate. We see our parents communicate, we see teachers and other people communicate, but it's not always the most effective, and they likely learn some bad habits along the way. So can we think intentionally about how we communicate and our habits? And that's today's conversation. Thank you for the request from Janine and Lisa on Friday. I think it was Lisa that really said, let's go from hello to yes. How do we do that? I think we need to refresh on some of that. So that's what today is really all about. But you might also, usually when something's important, you might also want to think about the value of making it important. What's the impact if we aren't a little bit more effective at going from hello to yes? What's the impact if we're not great at conversations, or in particular, sales conversations? The impact is, well, we don't get to the outcomes that we want. And ultimately, the person that you're talking to wants as well. If we're aligned, if we're trying to do great things for people and bring our services to them. So I'm going to go over quickly just the rush communication model for conversations, because it is a model for going from hello to yes. And the ask as you listen in on this is not to say, oh, I know this or that, or this is wrong. The ask is, what's one piece of it that you're like, oh, I could do that one a little bit better, or there's room for improvement there. This is something I awakened to this morning when on Saturday, I decided I was going to run a half marathon. And I hadn't run more than 2 miles in any particular run in a long time. But I said, regardless of how long it takes me, I'm going to start out easy. I'm going to run a half marathon. Monday morning, my run was significantly easier, but it's because I put in some work ahead of time. But what I realized is it's been the incremental work along the way, the small wins that lead to the big wins. So we may go over a couple of big concepts here, but I'm asking for one win, one little thing that you're taking away from this, and then we'll debrief on it. But what's one thing that you could see for yourself? Oh, I could do that just a little bit better, and I'm going to practice that today, this week, and look to improve, because I think that's one of the cores to why people do get better or don't. It's, hey, I saw some cool stuff, but I didn't really say this is the thing that would make a difference for me, and then work on it. So let's do this. I'm going to ask right now, can you see my screen, Lisa Mosby? You see the rush model for conversations? All right, thumbs up. So this is a real simple model. It's stages of a conversation. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, and then we can talk about your takeaways. That's the goal of this. One takeaway, 2 or 3 is great, but definitely one for you. I'm going to say that there's stages of a conversation, and the ideal or optimal pathway is it's less about us and it's more about the other person. There's a phrase that often gets said: people don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And so the question is, if you were to look back on your conversations, recent conversations, what percentage do you know? What percentage of the time you were talking, and what percentage of the time was the other person talking? If we are great listeners and we ask great questions, oftentimes the other person will be talking a lot more. And when somebody's talking a lot and you're listening really well, they get the impression that you really care. And when they understand that you really care about them, they'll actually share a lot more with you. And then they're going to build trust with you, and they're going to want to know, what do you have to share with them? But that starts with relating. The first stage is, can I get related to you? Hey, Lisa, how's your day going? How's business? How'd you get into this business? Open-ended questions are also little strategies in terms of how you communicate with people. If you ask yes, no questions, the conversation could fall flat. If you ask how, what, tell me about this, open-ended, they're going to start to open up a little bit more. And we want to get related. There's a string of questions that you can actually use to get related. I'm not going to go into those right now because we got to move forward. Understand is a little bit different than relate. Relate is we've got rapport, we're connected. Understand is, do I understand what's really important to you? What might be bothering you? What pain points you're looking to address? So it's a deeper level of relating. It's truly understanding what's important to the person and where are some of their challenges, because those challenges will lead to what we might be able to potentially help them with or join forces on. So relate, understand. If you do these two stages well, and these are all about who? They're all about the other person. This is not for you to say, oh, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. Let me talk. No, 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 no. You want to take a pulse check. How quickly do you start talking in a conversation? And what if you didn't do that? What if you asked questions for people to share more deeply and more about what they're dealing with? I watch it happen all the time. We hear something and then we want to say how we know something about something. And what happens in that moment is, who does the conversation all of a sudden become about? It becomes about us and not about them. Think about it. Do you ask one or two questions after somebody's makes a comment? I watch it in networking situations all the time. It's almost like this back and forth of just people throwing information at each other. Rarely do I watch in a circle someone ask the person who just commented to share a little bit more. It is rare. So if you're doing that, you're already, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, being a little bit different. And it's actually impactful. I have some stories about that happened recently. So relate, understand. If you do steps 1 and 2 really well, oftentimes, because they've been talking so much, they say, hey, I've been talking a lot. Tell me about you. What is that? An open invitation that they want to hear about you. You didn't have to like jump into the conversation and tell them about you. You got invited to share about you. That means they're open and willing and interested in listening to what you have to say, rather than you guessing because you think you're going to say something that might be groundbreaking to them and it ultimately isn't, because you haven't listened to them yet. If they don't, but it's been going on for a while, a magic question: would it be okay if I share a little bit about who I am? Would it be okay if I told you a little bit about the product or service that I have to offer? Again, you're not jumping in and saying, let me tell you about this. you're actually asking permission. And there's psychological strategy around all of this as well. You're giving them autonomy. They get to choose whether or not they want to hear from you. We're not throwing stuff at them. We're asking them, could I share a little bit about this? I think it might be relevant to you. That question rarely will get a no, especially if you've listened deeply for a while. It's like magic. Only if you put the attention on them in the first stage of the conversation. So share is step 3. We've related, we've built rapport, we've understood them on a deeper level. And now either they've asked us because they've talked a lot to share something, or we've asked them for permission to share something before we're sharing anything about ourselves. Now, I'm not saying there's not a little bit of back and forth dialogue inside of steps 1 and 2, but the tendency for most people is to make it about them, talk on some tangent that takes the attention away from what's important, which is the other person. Now, when you have the opportunity to share, ideally, you've listened really well, so you know what's important to them. You know what their pain points or challenges are. So now when you share things that are relevant to what they said, not what's relevant to your agenda. If we're attached to an outcome and then we start sharing things that are not relevant to the person, there's a mismatch, rapport is broken, and all of a sudden they know they're being sold to, or that you're trying to drive them in a certain way. No, we want to share something about us or a product or our service relevant to, and we might even reference, yo, you said something like this, this, and this. I think this might be something for you to consider. Can I tell you more about that? Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, let me tell you a little bit more about it. Once we've shared and shared effectively, the last stage is harness, because now we need to come to some kind of collective path forward. Harness is think next steps. I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in where people are like, oh, this is great. This is great. Like, I'm so looking forward to how this all works out. But you don't lock in like the next step. The next step might simply be, hey, let's put more time on the calendar. And oftentimes we're like, yeah, we should talk again. We should talk again versus, hey, let's put something on the calendar. Are you free next Wednesday? Are you free next Thursday? Like, let's actually lock this in. So harness is not stepping over the opportunity of all that has been already created in the conversation. Because oftentimes, once we leave a conversation, it's like all the energy of it is gone. So if you even follow up the next day or next week, they're already distracted by all the other things that are going on in their life. At the point of peak energy, we've had a great conversation. There's some ideas to press forward. Is it we're going to set another meeting? Is it I'm going to send you some follow-up items and then I'm going to follow up with you? Harness. It's like you got a horse, you got to put a harness on it so you can keep riding the horse and have it pull the buggy forward. So are you harnessing? So I'm going to pause here, but you might for yourself say, what is my balance of power? Do I find myself talking more than I find myself listening? The moment I hear somebody say something that I think I've got something interesting to say, do I jump and start talking about me or talking about how brilliant I think this other thing is? Or do I ask them another question? Tell me a little bit more about that. Why is that important to you? Why is that challenging for you? What are you looking for in a solution? Questions, not making it about us. Do we share? How do we share? Do we share relevant to what's been said, or are we going in our own direction because we're attached to an outcome and harness? Are we good at locking in some forward momentum on the conversation? What is the next step? If we read the room well, this next step will be obvious and mutually beneficial. If we don't, we're going to try to harness something that doesn't want to be harnessed. If like we didn't have a great conversation and I say, oh, can I send you some information about my product? Like probably not appropriate. But if it went well and they were really interested about what you were saying, yeah, let me send you some information about my product, and would it be worth having a follow-up conversation next week? Yeah, okay, great. It's gonna be easy if to harness things that are mutually already on the table. If we're trying to push something at harness, When we didn't do the other 3 steps well, it's going to be much difficult. It's going to be awkward, and they're going to feel forced into something, which is not where you want for somebody. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. That was probably a little more than I planned on jumping into, but I think that's, Lisa, you asked for some of this. I'll go to you first. Did this touch on some of the things you were thinking about, and what stood out for you?
I will tie it to an experience I had this week. I was asked to be a guest on a podcast. And so the podcast host is interviewing me. And every time they ask a question and I answer the question, then they told me how they had, oh, I had the same experience. I have a real estate license. I blah, 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 blah. And I was so lost. And I'm a fairly decent speaker. I can be interviewed on the spot and I'm not generally at a loss for words. I will say that about myself. But that was the most awful experience because I couldn't follow. I thought you were talking about me and you're telling stories about you and where are we going? And then all of a sudden a question out of left field came and it was like, how is that related to what we were just talking about? And how is this about the entrepreneur's journey? And I have been dwelling on it all weekend. Like, I don't really want them to air anything. I was like, do I call them and say, hey, have you edited this podcast yet? I'd like to see the finished product because I don't know that I'm going to sign off on you using that because it was not a good representation of me. And so I think we can get into those same scenarios when we're either meeting, like you said, networking, meeting people, or even having conversations with friends, family, and children, especially. Kids tend to be like this nowadays. And so we don't get to know them. They're constantly buried in their phone and not making eye contact, not being present or, watching the TV if it's on or all these other distractions. And I think our communication has really gone out the window. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with our group and pour into our people here because, we're all guilty of it. I'm totally guilty of it. I know better. I've been trained on this. I've been teaching this for years and years and years and years, and I still do it. So it's good to have a reminder. And I still catch myself wanting to share my stories when somebody says something. But I know how awful it feels to be on the receiving side of that. So thanks for the reminder, and I'll get that back in check.
I love it. And did anything stand out for you?
The continuation, you very, very rarely do you hear somebody say, tell me more, or the continuation of something that they're sharing. I don't use that. I've totally gotten out of the habit of using that. I can't tell you the last time that I actually did that, where I listened to what somebody had to say. And because we're in these virtual meetings all the time and I'm facilitating, oftentimes somebody else will have their hand up. I know they've been waiting for a while and I rush to that next person rather than pause. Give a continuation. You always do that with me. I finish saying, then you give a thought, and you always come back to me a second time. I was like, oh, thank you, because there was more. There was more, and I don't do that. So that's my takeaway for today. I'm going to do that this week.
Beautiful. And what's the value of that? I think it was embedded in what you said, but when we bring it to light even a little bit more, like the impact of not doing it is someone feels X. The impact of doing it is someone feels and experiences Y. How would you fill in X and Y?
When we don't do that, the person is still thinking their own thoughts, and now they're not listening to you by not giving them a chance to finish that. And we don't always get everything out in one comment. We need to take a pause, but society is so uncomfortable with that pause that when we take a pause, we're moving on, versus we can take a pause and then we can come back to that and say, that really landed for me. Can you share a little bit more about that? Or how do you experience that? Or in this case, you just asked me, is there a specific takeaway? And I didn't get that. I thought it when I was hearing you say it, I had the takeaway, but then I formulated this other answer and I never shared the takeaway. So you gave me a chance to bring that back. So all day long, I don't think about, why didn't I tell him that? That would have been really good. We get caught in those thoughts. And so it's an opportunity for us to not allow people to get caught in their thought, to fully express what they were saying. Even if they couldn't do it on the first try, they have another chance at it.
Yeah, well said. Can I give you one other to consider?
Sure.
So, and I'm just, I'm
Yeah.
real time like documenting. Like I just asked Lisa's permission if I could share something else before I just said, Lisa, consider this too.
Yeah.
So just I'm giving everybody a little bit of experience of. So as you were saying that, Lisa, if we think about the percentage of people that don't even ask a follow-up question, if that is significantly high,
Mhm.
and we are the one person that asks a follow-up question. And I talk in communication, we want to figure out ways to differentiate ourselves, to build deeper relationships. If the person you're talking to, everyone they talk who talks to them never asks them a follow-up question, and you're the one person who asks them a follow-up question, you're the one person who listened to them, maybe not just one follow-up question, you're like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? They're like, whoa, this is an experience I don't often have. So now they think a little bit different about conversations with you. And the other piece of this, if you're really good at listening and asking good questions, they are going to go places they didn't expect to go in the conversation. And they're going to discover something they weren't planning on discovering. So when you ask really good questions, you actually can help somebody else see a blind spot or see something that they weren't going to see. And when that's really profound, like it can be, whoa, I need to have more conversations with Lisa because nobody else has allowed me to see what I just saw. And so that's part of this art and this I'd say skill of communicating is having people feel seen, heard, understood. What they say really matters. And some will throw Oprah into this conversation and say, why did people pour their hearts out on Oprah in this public place? Because of the way she listened, because of the conversations she had, because of the questions she asked. She put them in a position where they felt comfortable opening up in ways that they hadn't opened up with anybody else. Now, there's all the dynamics of being on a public thing and all this stuff, but still, they were probably sharing stuff they weren't planning on sharing with
Mhm.
a studio audience, let alone the general public. So, any closing thoughts there, Lisa?
Um, Yeah, what comes to mind is before this meeting every week, I meet with my personal assistant, and she's very shy. She's from the Philippines, and she doesn't. They're just trained not to share about their personal lives. And so, being the having the personality that I have, a red would jump in. Let's hit it. We're doing it. Like here's what's on the agenda today. And being a yellow, it's like, how was your weekend? What did you do? So like I'm getting to know her personally, and it's almost like now she shows up because she knows I'm going to say, how was your weekend? And she has something to say and say. So I think she comes prepared to say something because she's so uncomfortable saying something. But I'm starting to see it kind of like open up, like, oh, I just shared even more about that. Even more about that. Today, we were talking about what she's doing for training and learning it through Meta and the classes she's taking on digital marketing. And I just don't think that they're trained to, or they're trained out of sharing personal information. And then the language barrier too. And I'm seeing that open up right in front of me. So,
Yeah. And that's what's possible in
mhm.
relationships is they may open up with you in ways and flourish and blossom in ways that culturally they've never had the opportunity or been trained. So like there's another subtlety here. And oftentimes it was the deer by the water just taking a little sip, but it hurt here's one twig crack and it takes off. So
Mhm.
that's how sometimes when we're in these delicate moments with people, our ability to tread slowly, carefully, delicately in the conversation will allow them to gradually like get more comfortable with us. So there's the EQ element of it is reading the room, reading the energy such that oh, I think it's okay to go a little bit further here, a little bit further here, a little bit further here, because we're walking alongside them. We're not like pulling them or we're not pushing them through a door. We want to ideally have it feel like we're walking side by side and we're going on this journey together. I'm not trying to force you to do anything, I'm not gonna force you to do anything. You feel that safety and trust, and you're like, oh, I want to go for a walk with Lisa. Let's go. Let's do it. Yeah.
I think that's a value. The EQ is a valuable point because there are people that you meet that you don't give them the third degree. You can't continually fire questions at them because I'm going to follow this hello to yes format and this is what I'm going to do. Sometimes you have to be vulnerable and you have to share outside of your comfort zone to create and build that trust before you can actually go into that place of asking them the questions. And the questions that you choose to ask, like there's a fine line in business, especially woman to man, that you don't necessarily ask personal questions like with you try to keep it on that business level, and there'll be an opportunity where you can ask about their kids or their wife or their husband, but men are built a little bit differently and they don't lead with that. Where women, you better go to the kids first, the family first. If they're a grandparent, something like that, you're going to build trust faster with them that way than going straight into business. So the EQ is really important. Like, how are you reading the room, and is it okay to make it all about them, or are they too much of an introvert that it's not okay to make it about them, and you need to share first and then invite them into that conversation?
I think that's a beautiful subtlety to this. And because we're glazing over it, it's not just asking questions and interrogating. It might be asking a question, and exactly what Lisa is saying is, oh, they might not feel all that comfortable to open up too much. So in response to their answer, I might share a little bit in terms of being vulnerable, in terms of like opening myself up so they know, hey, he's a safe place. He just shared something personal to him. So now I may be more comfortable to share something personal to me. And the subtlety there is sometimes when we do that, we go a little too far and then it becomes about us. So it's share a little and then
Mhm.
volley it back, share a little, volley it back, because we're doing this together. And ultimately, I want it to be more about you than it is about me. Yeah, good point, Lisa. All right, we've got some other folks here. Does anybody else want to share one of their takeaways or something that stood out for them that you said, oh, okay, this is something I could probably put in for myself? Jim, you're the one on camera, but I see Money Coach Chris, Janine, Thorin. Jim, over to you. What's one takeaway you got, if you don't mind? All right, there you
I
are.
think it's difficult to always read the room.
So it's difficult to read the room sometimes. It's like, hey, what is actually best approach in this particular scenario? I'm trying to sort it through, and that can be challenging.
Yeah.
All right. That's it, Jim? Got
Yeah.
usually you got a couple of things.
Uh, I'm actually working on trying to figure out a solution for a young man who, unfortunately, he's a programmer and speaking of EQ, he lost his shit with his wife. Didn't hurt her, but he put his hand through a glass wall, and now he may lose the ability to be a programmer. So he's in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
So he did not read that room very well. And I sometimes get really triggered by his lack of, why don't you just let her have the fucking opinion? Because he wants to change her. I mean, I think many men, well, I must help you. You're a woman. Well, women are more collaborative and just as bright as any man on the planet. So, uh, and the sadness for me is I'm trying to enroll him uh, in creating some products for me. So I may not be able to do that right now. I may have to either go outside and get another person. So, but he's a great kid, um, and he's working on it. So what can you say?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I could tell it's important to you too, Jim. It's not
Yeah,
like, oh, by the way, it's like, no, this is important.
yeah. I mean, there's enough uncertainty and fear in the world. So I think when we can step back and just let other people have their beliefs. And if you one of the things I like to do when I'm coaching is to say, well, what I like about what you said is, and try to find 10% of something that you can say, what I like about what you said is you shouldn't kill people. That's great. You shouldn't kill people.
Yeah, that's
Just
that's
something
no.
simple, because it does open up the juice for people to be able to respond.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. And point in emphasis in the moment is I could have taken Jim's, it's hard to read the room, nothing more to say. I could have stopped and said, okay, like that's a good point. But I know Jim. We know Jim. Jim's got a lot of things that he often shares with us. So reading the room, my EQ was, seems like something's going on with Jim. I didn't ask him that, but I think we realized from his share after a couple of back and forths, like what's going on. And so we wouldn't have gotten that if we took his comment and just went in a different direction. So that's the value of the listening, the EQ, and asking a couple more questions. Money, Clarity, and Co. Come on in. What do we got, Money Coach Chris?
Good morning. Yeah, so I love what you were sharing. And then something in Lisa sharing came up for me, like when you were on the podcast and the interviewer was like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me." I find that I used to be that person a lot. Like somebody would say something, I'm like, "Oh yeah." And I did a lot of work on that. Like, why do I do that? And it was like, oh, because I want them to know that I understand, because I also went through that. And so I catch myself a lot. I'm like, don't talk, don't talk, don't talk. Like, let them talk. Let me let them talk. But for me, I've gotten a lot better at listening to people, and it's, so as somebody that's not wired that way, who's always been like either one, having to defend yourself, or two, like, oh yeah, I want you to know that I do understand you, so let me like jump in and tell you what happened to me too. It's not very easy to be silent and let other people talk. And so that is something that I've had to train myself to stay silent, to not say something. And I do really good at that with clients and with professional people. I'm still really hard working on that with my husband. And I don't know why that is, but that's something that I do work on. Um, I might not do a very good job and then later be like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, can we just completely stop this conversation because it's pointless, you know? Um, so anyway, this was a good thing to hear today.
Yeah, yeah. Any ideas as to why?
As to why, like, why is it hard for me with him, or why is it
Yeah,
hard in
I've got ideas. I deal with it in my own life, so I'm curious if you've like, because it's sometimes it becomes a like you just shut down. I don't see a pathway here. And then you're like, oh, well, afterwards, I could have maybe done this or said this, but everything inside of me did not want to do things that I know might actually be valuable, so to speak. Are
Yeah.
you stumbling upon any new ideas?
No, nothing new. I think it's just more, that saying, like, we tend to hurt the ones that we love most. And I think it goes back to, it's because we're the most comfortable with them, so we're not watching and we're not trying to be more intuitive about how we say what we say when we say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
sometimes what I've noticed is there's a lot of built up history. And so like the littlest thing can be very sensitive. And we both
Mhm.
know each other's sensitivities and don't always realize we're pressing on them a little bit. And so that causes defenses to go up instantaneously. And so how do we realize we're doing it? And then even though we feel so, sometimes I'm speaking for myself, emotionally like I'm right about this, how do we let that go? And again, in this conversation, how do we get curious and actually listen to the other person in those moments where there's something we feel we need to fight for because we feel threatened, or we feel like we need to be in control, or we feel we need to be defensive in some way. So just those are some of my
Yeah.
things that I'm always aware of and working on actively. Anything else there, Money Coach?
Nope, that's it.
Amazing. Well, this has been a fun conversation. We got Janine and Thorin. Either of you want to, and Lisa's got something. Lisa, what do you got?
Oh, the thought that came up when Chris was sharing that was, I am not attached to right or wrong. Like I'm not, I don't know when that happened. I think my dad taught me that there is no such thing as right or wrong. Everybody's entitled to, kind of coming back, tying this to what you're saying, Jim, is that there is no right or wrong. My right is right for me because of my life experiences. Your right is right for you because of your life experiences. Together, we can discover a better way. And if you do personality tests, mine, there's one of them, and mine is to find a better way. It's always to simplify or find a better way. And so when you become detached from right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Now you can get into listening mode, hear what somebody has to say. They're not trying to change your mind. They're not trying to, make you see something that's not there. It's just, you're just listening. You're just curious and fascinated. The other word that I had to get rid of is frustrated. Anytime I want to say the word frustrated, I choose to say the word fascinated because it shifts the energy. Like I could be frustrated and go, wow, that's fascinating. Oh my gosh, that's so fascinating, right? Like it's a completely different feeling and emotion. Now I can be curious because I'm fascinated, not frustrated. So I think semantics, conscious language, all of those things matter when we're having conversations. And when we become detached from right or wrong, when we become detached from outcomes and we can just be in the moment, it's a completely different experience for both us and the person that we're with, the listener or the speaker.
I think you just pointed to, Lisa, a phenomenon that often happens inside the morning rush is if Money Coach Chris and I were just having a one-on-one conversation, I wouldn't have heard what you just heard, and I wouldn't have shared what you just shared. But that was incredibly valuable, incredibly insightful, and you tied it to what Jim said, right? So that's just for all of us to think about. We're in these one-to-one sales conversations or whatever conversations we're in. Sometimes we think we know everything, but it continually happens in conversations like these where other people are listening to the same exact conversation. And maybe because they're a little less attached in the moment or a little less attached to whatever's going on, they can hear it differently and they have access to an even more valuable, not rating value, but a more valuable insight that I didn't have access to. Lisa had access to it, listening from a third party kind of the conversation. So anyway, that's just something to remind ourselves. We don't always have all the answers, but our ability to listen and allow others to share is where some answers may come from. And that's part of sales too, is we don't always have to be the one with the ultimate solution. When we're good at asking questions and then walking with the person for them to say, oh, I think this is what I need. They may have exactly what they need inside. They just need somebody to help them bring it out. And that's really valuable, because on one of my other trainings, it's don't tell the person what you think they should need. It's have them tell you what they need and then help them get it. And so that's a little different. It's like sometimes we think, oh, I know exactly what they need. Well, maybe, but let's actually have them discover what they need, because when it's their discovery and it's in their words, it's a lot more like personal to them rather than some parent. Sometimes that's what it feels like. Parents saying, hey, you got to go do this. In our conversations, if I say, Lisa, you should go do this, you're like, whoa, hold on, killer. Like, who made you, boss here? You know me better than I know me. But if we can have a conversation where they come up with, maybe I should do this. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Can I help you? Okay, yeah, let's do it. All right, now we're harnessing and we're walking together. With that, I'm gonna wrap up here. Thorin, I don't know if you had a comment. We haven't heard from you yet, but if you'd like to jump in, we'd love to hear your voice. And otherwise, we'll start to wrap up here. He may be on the road or otherwise detained. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, for bringing this topic forward. Wednesday, we've got the biz brainstorm with Money Coach, and Friday, Janine had brought up, I think Lisa had brought up fear. Like, how do we look at fear, and how do we overcome fear, and maybe how do we use fear in some way? Maybe it brings awareness to something and then we adjust, or maybe we harness it in another way. So that's that. Any closing thoughts anyone want to put in?
I want to share one thing.
Yeah.
My book is here.
Yes.
This
Rewired
is the hard,
for
this is
wealth.
the hardcover. I have the hardcover and the paperback version that will be released very soon.
And
Oh my gosh, girl, I need to find out where you printed it and all the stuff, so we'll talk.
Okay.
I can't wait to hold on to mine.
A
Congratulations.
how
picture.
does that feel, Money Coach Chris? Tell us a little bit about what you're experiencing right now.
No, I'm just so excited. Like, when I got the copy, so this is the hardcover and then the paperback, I wanted proofs of both because you see, I'm just making
Yeah.
sure everything is good before like they're out in print.
Mm.
And it was like when I opened it, I was like, oh my gosh, my book is here. And the paperback version, I was excited and I was like, oh, but then when I got the hardcover, I was like, oh, like I was in love with the hardcover. And I'm like, this is yes. And so talking about like speaking, since I'm bringing emotional intelligence to finances, learning and understanding when you're in your room, when you're talking to somebody and helping them get through that, because being emotionally intelligent around how you're wired for money is not an easy conversation for everyone to have. And so sometimes, like you were saying, David, like when you leaned into Jim, I'm like, oh, I have to do that with clients. Like there has to be something here. And they're just uncomfortable talking about this stuff that they're like, it's like when you shine the light on somebody and uncover like a deeper rooted truth for them, sometimes it's hard to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
Anyway, I'm excited.
Oh, it's a congratulations. It's a
Oh
cool
my gosh, I'm so excited for you.
thing. Yeah.
Thorin did come off mute for a second there, so he may have a thought before we go.
Keen eyes, Lisa. No, my comment only is to say that this was a listening and learning moment for me today. I did appreciate the conversation. There was no need for me to interject. I had nothing that I find that I could have added value. So today I was receiving and I appreciated it. Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
Good to have you in receive mode, Thorin. Thank you for being with us. There he is. Skylight, sky roof, shades, future is bright. Jim, final comment.
Chris, Money Chris, when you try to show that, I can't see it because you're using a background that tries
yeah.
to cover it all up. So it would be great for a person like me that if you just took a picture, put it in there so that I could actually see it. Maybe
Yep.
I want to get the book, you know.
Yes. I'm going to share it right now on our WhatsApp.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Jim,
Yes.
what would
And then
what-
so my goal is that by tomorrow I have it all perfect. I'm just waiting on a QR code and then it'll be available for sale in Amazon first and then I'll work on everywhere else after.
Okay.
Well,
Very
Perfect.
cool. Very cool. There's a cool experience. Like I was in the office 2 weeks ago now, and I didn't even write the book. It was LinkedIn Unlocked. My name is on the book as an
yeah.
author.
Huh.
And somebody was talking, like we were literally having a conversation at my desk, and I said, "Oh, you're looking to learn more about LinkedIn?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Hold on a second."
Here's the book.
And I handed him a book, and he's like, "Oh, this is cool." I said, "Yeah, look at the author." It's just fun. It's fun to play with, but it actually, whether you're like, instead of handing a business card, you could create a tiny little book that's printable for $5 or whatever it is. And now you've got that. That's a little bit different than handing a business card, so to speak. So it's a pretty powerful tool. That's for sure. Yeah. All right, everyone, have a beautiful, blessed day. Thank you. Great conversation and more to come.